Morning, everyone. Boker
You
tov
have to
lekulam.
lower the camera a little bit.
We go now.
Great.
That's
Perfect.
Rabbi, please ask people to mute their phone, mute their systems because it's too much interference.
Okay.
Especially
Everyone,
George.
I think I can mute everyone, but we'll ask everyone to mute. Okay. If you do have a question, you can unmute yourself. How does that sound?
Amazing.
Boker tov lekulam. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We thank our sponsors, Gary and Ella, for sponsoring this class. And we are entering into the Pesach period with circumstances that there's no one we could turn to for some advice how to deal with due to its newness. It's a unique Pesach. It's a unique season. There are some challenges we are facing. And we have this difficulty in, on the one hand, getting joyed and feeling excited about the fact that we are going to very soon be celebrating this wonderful Chag. And at the same time, here we are, detached from communities, concerned for the welfare of many, news trickling in daily. And what scares us most is the fact that we know very well that tomorrow's news might be worse than today's news. I think we all know people that are ill. Thank God, vast majority, it is minor, but there are some serious situations. My Rosh Hashiva in Chicago, I understand, he's a man in his early 90s who's in critical, but thank God, stable condition. So these are challenging times. So we'll start off with a prayer to the Ribono Shel Olam. What has inspired us is the fact that even the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, in an interview, mentioned the fact that we have to turn to the one above. He got cut off. If you did see that clip, he got cut off for mentioning his faith. But the fact is, we have to turn to the one above. We have this attitude of being in control of everything. And we're getting this reminder that there's one above who is in control. So we'll turn to the one who is in control, that he should have mercy on Klal Yisrael, mercy on humanity. It's a time really to focus on the chesed that we could do. The chesed we could do during this period of time is connecting by phone, connecting through email, because there are many that are feeling this loneliness far more than others. So let's be mindful of that. When a few years ago, I mentioned that in 1944, in Bergen-Belsen, it was before Pesach, and as they were entering to the Pesach season, they were saddened from the fact that Pesach is not going to be Pesach where they were. And the food they would be eating is not going to be a Pesach dik. The only food they had was a little bit of stale bread. And there was a rabbi there who wrote a tefillah. There was a rabbi there who wrote a prayer to the Almighty that, and the words of the prayer are that Almighty, and this was a prayer that was supposed to be said on the Seder night. And he said the following, Hineni muchanum zuman, Almighty, I am preparing myself, lekayem mitzvah, that by eating this bread on the Seder night, I am going to be fulfilling the mitzvah of v'chai bahem. V'chai bahem is the mitzvah that a Jew knows very well, that the greatest mitzvah of all is to live and to take care of your health. And that is what we are doing by eating this chametz on the Seder night. And we all have no doubt that that prayer and that eating was a greater mitzvah than all the matzah we've been eating in the past 75 years, because it was a deep prayer to the Almighty with an understanding of what we should be doing. And this is a time to remember what we do now, and we do right, and we do with a good attitude. And there could be some leniencies we have to take into considerations. There are some times that we're not going to have a Seder as we expected. Specific family members that we were perhaps looking forward to spend time with, it's not going to take place. But when we do it right, and when we do it with an understanding that it is for the sake of the welfare of ourselves and others, that's the greatest mitzvah. Let's remember that and let's keep that in mind as we enter into this season. Let's talk a little bit about the Hagadah. Are you familiar with the Briskers? Briskers, Reb Chaim Brisker. The Brisker legacy is one that sitting in our shul, sitting at Bnei Torah, we're mindful of. And I'll share with you a question that Reb Chaim Brisker would ask his family members every single Seder night. Are you ready for the question? Reb Chaim Brisker asks, wait a second, what are we doing here tonight? We're remembering the Exodus. Remembering the Exodus, Zechirat Yetziat Mitzrayim, is a mitzvah we do every single day. So the question he would ask is, in what way is remembering the Seder or the activities of the Seder night any different than the remembering of the Exodus that we are supposed to do every single day? Leman tizkor et yom tzitcha me'eretz Mitzrayim kol yemei chayecha. We do it every day, so what's so special about the Seder night? In what way do we do it different on the Seder night? And he would give 3 answers, okay? Number one, that all other days, the mitzvah of remembering the Exodus and remembering that that's what we are all about. We left Egypt to link ourselves, to connect ourselves to the Almighty. Every single day, the mitzvah is just to mention it. On the Seder night, on the other hand, it must be in a format of she'ela v'tshuva. It must be a conversation. A question has to be asked, and we have to answer. There must be a dialogue, okay? So that's explanation number 1. You're familiar with the story that when Rabbi Yochanan lost his great colleague and friend and student, Resh Lakish, he was very depressed. So they brought in some other rabbinic students to fill in that role of Rish Lakish. And Rabbi Yochanan sits down the first day with this new student, and Rabbi Yochanan shares an insight into the Talmud. And the student says, Rabbi Yochanan, you are right. I have proof to support your opinion. And Rabbi Yochanan says, that's not what I want. I miss Rish Lakish. When I would share insights, when Rish Lakish was present, he would argue with me. He would argue, and then I would have to defend my position. We would have a conversation. That's what I'm interested in, to find support. I don't want you to support. I want you to argue. Jews are very good in arguing, right? But that's how we find the truth. If everyone will agree to everything I say, it would be a very boring Judaism, right? People must comment on what the rabbi says, right? Now, the rabbi learns, by the way, as a result, perhaps what yes to say, what not to say. Perhaps it could be done in a better way. Dialogue is good. And the Seder night, says Reb Chaim Brisker, piece of information number 1 is that it has to be a derech she'ela v'tshuva. A question has to be asked, right? We work very hard on getting the children interested. We want questions. We want people to have a discussion. The Seder night is a night of a discussion. And that's piece of information number 1 that Reb Chaim Brisker would present to his family. Number 2, you should know that, says Reb Chaim, all other nights, all other days when we have that mitzvah of remembering the Exodus, all you got to do is share the fact our ancestors left Egypt. Mission accomplished. Tonight, on the Seder night, you have to, in his words, the chain of events. You have to share the history of how things progressed. That our ancestor Yaakov had to go first to Aram and return to the land of Israel. But then Yosef was, so you have to go through the history of our nation. That's what we have to do on the Seder night. We talk about our history. And by the way, many people have the tradition that they share with their children a little bit about things they went through in the past, right? There's an understanding that this is the night when we create a link in this great, magnificent chain that is called Jewish history, right? That is what's important. I share every Seder night, every Seder night. Now, eventually, what happens, at least in our place, is that when I start sharing things every single year, the kids have to share it beforehand, right? To make the joke that, now you're going to share with us the story of Pesach Matzah Mar. Now, what is the story of Pesach Matzah Mar? So this is a story that I'm able to share with my children, and I hope, God willing, they'll create those future chains that this tradition could live on. That it was 1986, which is how many years ago already? 34 years ago? Where are the mathematicians? Can I get a nod, Gershuni? 1986. So we're sitting there by the Seder, and my grandfather, Rabbi Milevsky, is no longer speaking. I can't tell you medically what the condition was, but he would not utter a word anymore. Garnished. He was ill for about 18 months prior to his passing. He passed away a few months later on the day after Tisha B'Av. So we come to the Seder, and for my grandmother, this was very difficult to see her husband in this state, because throughout the years, he ran the Seder like no one else, and here he was a silent man. So my late father turns to us and he says, kids, we have a job this Seder. Make a lot of noise. All of you read the Hagadah out loud. Why? Because by doing that, there'll be so much noise, Safta won't realize that Saba's not saying a word. Okay? So it was the first time ever that my father said, make a lot of noise. So we're sitting there at the Seder in Rehov HaMeiri 1 in Yerushalayim. A few lucky of you people are there in Yerushalayim. And we're sitting there, we're reading the Haggadah out loud, and we're going through it. Good, we go through a decent speed. We don't take forever. And then we reach the point in the Haggadah where Rabban Gamliel tells us, you should know. What does Rabban Gamliel say? Kol shelo amar, whoever does not say these three things has not fulfilled his obligation. Kol shelo amar shlosha dvarim elu bepesach, whoever does not say three things on the Seder night has not fulfilled his obligation. Ve'elu hen, and these are they. Here they are. And at that moment, my father was silent. We obviously were all quiet. And my grandfather opens his eyes and he says, Pesach Matzah Mar. And he returns back into his state. Those were the three words that he said. And it was an experience, because here's a man that was no longer speaking, but for somehow, subconsciously, or perhaps so much part of his identity was that for the Seder night you say those three things. Those were the three things that Saba was able to say. So that's a story that I share with the next generation. We all have, or we all should have, some kind of story to share from the past, because this is the night that brings that really creates this incredible link. And we Jews appreciate history. You know how many times I'm driving my Avigail a cup, I'm really driving her nuts, telling her, you recognize that you're going to have to one day, God willing, tell your kids about living as an 11-and-a-half-year-old through the coronavirus. And it's something that's important to remember, that this is an historical event, and what you do now and how you dealt with it, and if you were able to utilize it and enhance your tefillah, your prayer, it is a time that we have to utilize, because to be studied. It's going to be studied. Be'ezrat Hashem. Obviously, we're waiting to reach that point. But we only got 2 out of 3 so far, right? We only got 2 out of 3. We only got 2 out of 3. So here we go. What's the third message that Reb Chaim Brisker told his family to be mindful of before the Seder night? That on the Seder night, you have to give ta'amei ha-mitzvah shel oto alayla. Ta'amei, the reason. In other words, throughout the year, just remember the Exodus. Tonight, we do specific mitzvot, and be sure to explain why we do it. So when we eat the matzah, we're supposed to say, why do we eat the matzah? Because our ancestors had to rush out of Egypt. Why do we eat the maror? Because it was bitter for them. You have to give a reason. You know that sometimes you interact with kids that love asking why. What age is it? I don't know. Is it 2-year-olds that love asking the why? Why do we have to do it? And sometimes it can make you meshuga. In other words, here you are on a ladder trying to get something from on top. It's starting to fall. You're asking the kid for assistance to pass something to block those objects from falling. And you say, can you pass me, please? Right? The book stop or whatever it is. Why? That's not a time to ask why. There are times you just do it. Seder night, we encourage the why. Seder night is that opportunity to go ahead and understand why we do it. So those are the three things that are really an introduction to the Seder night. But now we're going to move a little bit forward to an interesting debate that relates to pronouncing one word. Believe it or not, we Jews are blessed. We could have a debate for over 500 years about the proper pronunciation of one word in the Hagadah. And we've been debating it since the 16th century. So here we go. Towards the end of Magid, we have this duty to thank Hashem. Lefikach anachnu chayavim lehodot. We have to express our gratitude. Lehalel, leshabech. These are words we are familiar with. And therefore, we're going to go ahead and say this new song, a new song, which is the Hallel. Now, before we say that we're going to say this new song, we say the following in the Hagadah. It says, "V'nomar lefanecha, shira chadasha." We're going to say in front of you a new song, Hallelujah. Now, in the 16th century, there was one of the greatest rabbinic authorities in Europe. His name was Rabbi Shlomo Luria, the Maharshal. Maharshal was well respected. He came from a great rabbinic dynasty. When he writes about his yichus, what's interesting is that he shares that he had a great-great-grandmother. Her name was Miriam Shapira Luria, and she was a Rosh Yeshiva. Right? I don't know if this is well known, that he had a great-great-grandmother, Miriam, and she was knowledgeable in all rabbinic writings. However, there was an issue that she looked good, and she had to teach the Bochrim, so they put up a mechitza, right? This is before Zoom, right? So they put up a mechitza, and she gave a shear behind the mechitza to the Bochrim. This is what Reb Shlomo Luria shares with us with great pride about his great-great-grandmother Miriam. Now, Reb Shlomo Luria looks at that one word, v'nomar, and we shall say. And he says, I have a problem with that. You know, what do you mean v'nomar is that we're going to in the future? On the Seder night, we're not talking about the future. We're talking about the past. We're remembering the past. And since we are talking about the past, it should really be v'ne'emar. So here we go. According to Rabbi Shlomo Luria, you go ahead and you say the following. Umeshabud legula v'ne'emar lefanecha shira chadasha. And it was said in the past, a what? A shira chadasha. That's what Reb Shlomo Luria says. However, there's a tradition that dates back to the Gaon of Vilna. There's a tradition that dates back to the Gaon of Vilna. I have here, I'm going to show you, a Sidur. It's called Sidur Hagra Imakriyot. This is a Siddur that's known as the Vilna Gaon Siddur. It is also well known that it's not such a good job because a lot of things the Vilna Gaon really believes are not printed. There's a lot of controversy about this Siddur. That aside, it's a significant Siddur for me. We're talking about tradition because I got this actually in the year of Nisan Tafshin Membet, from my grandparents, from my Saba and Safta. So that was 38 years ago. Yikes, 38 years ago at the Siddur. Now, what's relevant for us is that there's a section in the Siddur where they share practices of Reb Chaim Volozhin in the name of the Gaon of Vilna, okay? And one of the practices mentioned is the fact that when it gets to Shira Chadasha, it should not be like Reb Shlomo Luria, who says that it is past tense, but rather it should be Venomar, we shall say, it should be future tense. Why is it future tense? So I'll tell you. The Seder night is not about history. It's about re-experiencing things. The Seder night is about actually feeling we went through Mitzrayim. And therefore, what the rabbis want us when we are reading this Hallel, and therefore, by the way, it's called a Shira Chadasha. It's a new song. It's not a song. It's not like Hanukkah. On Hanukkah, you don't call the Hallel a new Hallel. On the Seder night, it is expected from us to meditate and feel that we went through this experience of redemption. And therefore, we could say, we shall say a Shira Chadasha. Nothing to do with the past. It's an experience that is occurring today. So that's just a detail about how to view the Hagadah. And now, a few pieces of information. As a kid, the Seder night for many of us was a very long experience. Even for those who had the merit, like myself, to be in a home where we didn't take too long. My mother, on the other hand, notes that she would sit there at the Seder with the Hagadah, and she would have one finger, right, or two fingers holding the right side, and two fingers holding the left side, and she would wait for the right side to grow and the left side to become smaller and smaller, because by my Zaidi Manis, the Yeke, a Seder was until 3 o'clock in the morning, and they would read every single word and explain it over and over again. And the Almighty was kind to me that although some of my siblings spent the Seder with them, I never had that merit. I was always with Milevsky, with Saba Milevsky, but for some, the Seder is a very long experience. Now, as a child, what I enjoyed was to look through the siyurim, the pictures in the Hagadah. I think all of us have some kind of memories from pictures in the Hagadah, and that's what made it exciting, entertaining. So a big impression on me was the four sons. And by the way, this goes back already to the 16th century. If you have ever seen old Haggadahs from that period of time, there seems to be a lot with the four sons and how they appear, right? In every generation, what was considered a Rasha. It would be interesting to note, because you could really study a culture on what was the image of a Chacham and what was the image of a Rasha in every generation. Okay, the four sons, we're all familiar with them. What's incredible in that section of the Haggadah is the fact that our rabbis understood thousands of years ago that it is a must that when we educate the next generation, that we have to tailor the education. When education is one size fits all, it's going to be a complete disaster. When on the other hand, there's an understanding that no two kids are alike. When there's an understanding that you have to tailor it based on where the child is holding, you will have success. So when you read about the four sons, Keneged, Arba'a Banim, right? Keneged. Keneged, Arba'a Banim, Divra Torah. When we talk about that, right? Let me see if I could get myself here. When we talk about Keneged, Arba'a Banim, Divra Torah, what do you remember? No two children are alike. And there could be one child, there could be one that is barely interested in the Haggadah, and he could be sitting there reading a book, and that's his personality. Understand it and work with it. And then you could have a child that's interested in every single detail, work with him as well. That's, I think, an important message that relates to the Hagadah as well. Now, in the Hagadah itself, we were talking a few days ago about the fact that as we prepare for Pesach, we talked about 7 stages of preparation. What I mean by that is 30 days before Pesach, we are already in the spirit of Pesach. It's upped a little bit on Rosh Chodesh, even more so on the Shabbat before Pesach, and then the night before, and then the morning. So there are many, many stages of allowing ourselves to get closer and closer into that spirit. Now, in the Hagadah, we are told the following. Technically speaking, the commandments of God were given to the people of Israel already on Rosh Chodesh. So if so, perhaps we could go ahead and start fulfilling this mitzvah of sharing with the next generation. Perhaps it could begin already on Rosh Chodesh. Remember those words in the Hagadah? Yachol me Rosh Chodesh. One might think that we begin this process of inspiring and teaching the next generation. Perhaps that starts already on Rosh Chodesh. Talmud Lomar, what are we told? Only b'sha'ah, at the time that you have the matzah and the maror in front of you. Only at a time when you have the tangible items in front of you. And there's something very fundamental here. Judaism is loaded with values, important values, okay? Concern for the welfare of humanity. It's so important. In my messages and when I talk to people about the situation now, I remind everyone, yes, we daven for the welfare of our people, but we are concerned for the welfare of humanity. It's important to remember. It is fundamental. It is really fundamental. That's a Jewish value. When we all have a lot of time these days to sit and look at our phones and computers and different messages. I don't know what messages you get. Then you get some chachamim who are giving explanations as to why the Almighty is doing it, right? These really brilliant people, right? And if they're so brilliant, at least tell me where the market is going so I could invest properly. To tell me post facto and to start explaining, most of them border on the absurd. Here and there, you'll get a good message. Some of them talk about self-improvement. I'm on board. I try to improve. I'm not always successful, as you can ask those around me. But the idea of self-improvement is very Jewish. But to go ahead and start explaining about specifics, that's not my cup of tea, and I don't believe that's the Jewish way of doing things. However, last week, I had the opportunity of tuning into a message from the Telz Yeshiva of Chicago to the new Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Shmuel Yehuda Levin. And his message was that he feels terrible that he did not feel sufficient pain a few months ago when there were people suffering in China. In other words, when we heard about some kind of virus in China, okay, it sounded interesting. Perhaps we avoided some Chinese food as a result, right? Perhaps we made some kind of racist jokes. That's what we did. But he was saying what disturbs him was the fact that he realizes now that he should have felt the pain of other humans who are suffering. That's Jewish values, right? And that's why when we pray now, Rabbanu Shalom, Refuah Shalema, it is to the welfare of humanity, no question about it. And especially if we are hoping that this experience is going to get us closer to the Messianic era, and a very significant part of the Messianic era is humanity recognizes God. So that means that we are concerned about humanity. That's a Jewish value. Now, Jewish values are great. Sometimes there's a problem that there are those that take the values, but they don't take those things that are tangible of Judaism, right? That's a problem. The way we have a successful transmission of what we are about is with values, but at the same time have things that are tangible. Tangible. When you are told, eat a specific amount, that's tangible. When you are told at the Seder night, eat matzah, eat maror, eat a sandwich, right? Drink 4 cups of wine. Those things are tangible. when you take the values and you link them to something tangible, that is how you transmit them to the next generation. That's what we are being told. You might think, so back to the Hagadah. Yachol me Rosh Chodesh, one might think that since Moshe is teaching the people of Israel values, and the values were taught already on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, perhaps there's a mitzvah to teach children already from Rosh Chodesh Nisan. No, don't teach them until you have actual tangible mitzvot. Then you will be able to transmit it. At the Seder night, when children eat that matzah and they eat the maror, and there's excitement. It is an exciting time. And those, when they experience teachings together with those foods, that is how you transmit it to the next generation. And by the way, it is important to have that consistency at the Seder night. And I'm like, for example, I've mentioned many times that I'm from the minority that even for the Seder night, I use machine shmura. Machine shmura. I don't touch hand matzah, okay? Hands off the hand matzah. That's my tradition. And for me, it is important, not just because of other reason, but I saw it by my grandfather. I saw by my grandfather machine shmura. I want Bezrat Hashem that future generations see it by me. Okay, that's something that's tangible. And I perhaps, if by any chance, the grandchildren Bezrat Hashem, if my grandchild Yehuda Yair Bezrat Hashem is interested in listening to me, I could share with him a little bit about the tradition. His name for me is a very beautiful name. My grandson in Baltimore, Kenai Nahar, is 2.5 weeks old. It's a beautiful name because the children shared that the name Yehuda relates to Hapam Odeh et Hashem. I give gratitude to God. And gratitude is so important. Gratitude. And to name a child that relates to gratitude, Yehuda is a beautiful name. And I believe that we illuminate. When do Jews illuminate? When do people illuminate? When they have gratitude. So therefore, he's Yehuda and Yair. He brings about light. That's what's important. And that's what, we hope that future generations, any future generation, it could be students, it could be whatever it is, let's be sure to keep things that are tangible alive, because that's how we transmit the values of Judaism. My older brother, so Sein Gesund, he's a brilliant fellow, my older brother. And he's probably one of the smartest, if not the smartest person I have to interact with. But as you know, I hope he's not watching, well, as brilliant people are different. They're different. And there are words that we and family members have to be careful not to use in front of him. For example, he doesn't like the word brilliant. He doesn't like it. So we never use the word brilliant in front of him. There's a few other ones that we have. Intellectual. Never say the word intellectual in front of my older brother, because he'll start arguing, how do you know who's an intellectual? Fine. So my older brother, he, in front of him, I always have this understanding that you have to be careful not to compliment someone in a field that you have no understanding. In other words, just as we all agree that if a 4-year-old child reads a short biography about Albert Einstein, and then afterwards he turns to Albert Einstein and he says, you know what, Albert, you're such a smart guy, you're a genius. It would be quite insulting, because you are basically telling Uncle Albert that you should know. The 4-year-old has a full understanding of all you are about and all your theories. So that's something that's, I think, logical. We take that approach, by the way, to God Almighty. We don't praise him with the chutzpah of believing that we truly understand what he is about. We don't. And the rabbis tell us that one time a student got up in the Bet HaKnesset, and he added in his Shmona Esrei praises of God, a whole series of praises. And the rabbis say to him, that's not what you should be doing. Praise God only that with that which the prophets told us to say. Don't add to it. Because by adding, you seem to claim that you have covered all his praises. You have not. Okay? So let's think about it. What are we doing on the Seder night? Are we praising God? The answer is we are not praising him. We are not praising him. What we are doing on the Seder night is expressing gratitude. And therefore, the psukim that are used in the Hagadah to go ahead and go through the process of the redemption from Egypt, they're not psukim that appear in the book of Shmot. They're not psukim that are going through what God did. They are psukim that appear in Devarim. They are psukim that appear in Kitavo. They are psukim, they are verses that appear in the section where we are told that when we bring the Bikurim, the new fruit, to Jerusalem, and we express our gratitude to God for the land of Israel and for the fact that we have the fruit of the land of Israel, we use those verses to express our gratitude. Because when they would bring Bikurim, they would run through the history of our nation, and that's how you express gratitude, by the way. When there's a contrast, you can express gratitude. So therefore, we use the psukim of Dvarim to go ahead and express our gratitude to God Almighty for what we are experiencing. With that, there's something quite interesting. In the section of Bikurim, and all of it appears in the Hagadah, by the way. All of it appears in the Hagadah, because we are told that after the Hagadah tells us that we have to, feel like we went through Exodus. So we are told, Se ulmad ma bikesh, go ahead and learn what Lavan wanted to do to our ancestors. And then we quote all the verses. Vayered Mitzrayim, vayagar sham, v'matei me'at. Keep your eyes open. You'll realize that all of them are from the section of Bikurim. Now, in the section of Bikurim, if you open a Chumash, we are told that the person who walks in and places down this basket with the fruits of the land of Israel, the Torah tells us that he starts off with ve'anita, with an ayin, ve'anita. So Rashi tells us that ve'anita means he should raise his voice. Other commentators note, no. You know what he's supposed to do? There's supposed to be a conversation. In other words, when he brings in the basket, the Kohanim say to him, why did you bring it? And he responds, I brought it because I want to express my gratitude. So what's fascinating to me is the fact that there's a conversation that's taking place in the Bet HaMikdash. That's what we Jews are about. We're about conversation. We're about discussing things, and things become clear. That is the Hagadah. That is really the Hagadah. The experience of the Seder night, when done as it should be, we talk about impression on the next generation. It really, if we sit down and think about it, and think about past and future, and how it all comes together, we see it as an historical event. And back to what we are going to be experiencing this year. There's no way to predict. There's no way to predict where we are going to be holding in 2.5 weeks from now, and we are hopeful. But odds are a lot of the travel plans of those who wanted to either go to Israel or bring people here, they're going to be affected by it. But I think that since our essence as Jews is gratitude, I truly believe that we have to let the difficulties penetrate, meaning realize that there are difficulties, but use it to go ahead and educate a future generation to gratitude. And it's something that, look, everyone here, I'm sure, flies to different places. So many people make reservations for flight 4 months in advance. And it's always quite awesome how you could sit 4 months beforehand and schedule a flight on a specific day at a specific time. And most times, unless it's Air Canada, most times it leaves exactly when I was sponsored by El Al, by the way. And most times it leaves exactly when you expect it. In other words, the idea of this expectation that everything works as you expect, this complete control that we expect, that by sitting with a little phone, you could go ahead and purchase for yourself a ticket, make for yourself a vacation, schedule hotels. And I think for those of us who it's new, we still appreciate it, right? For those who remember the days that a reservation meant that you have to pick up a phone, right, and sit and wait until you get through to the agent, right? Well, perhaps those are the people that have some difficulty doing it on the phone as well. But the fact is, we could compare it and contrast it to something and walk away with appreciation. But it scares me. It has scared me, the generation of my young daughter, right, who have this expectation that everything is easy. Everything is easy. Oh, you need a new computer. Okay, bingo, you get a new computer. Oh, you want to have a special type of air freshener from Bed Bath and whatever the name of the store is. They have a store, I think it's called, she told me, Body Bath Works, something like that. It's in the promenade. I got it wrong, but I hope that most of you know what I'm talking about. And there's a whole variety of soaps, and the fact is that I have no doubt that everyone's going to survive without going to that store for a month. I don't know if the store is going to survive, but everyone else is going to survive. And there's an expectation that that's how the world works. And what's sad is that when you walk around with expectations, there are the appreciation is gone. Appreciation is out the window. Nothing. What do you mean appreciate? This is what's supposed to be, that if there's any type of spice or food, I expect it to be on the shelves in the supermarket. And suddenly we're going through this crisis, which I really deep down believe it will make a better world. It will create, God willing, when we get over it, a world where people will start appreciating, even those, a generation that's lacking it. Older people I see have appreciation. Because especially with the people that I interact here in Bnei Torah, everyone remembers a time when there was less. So many of you could tell me of times when in the early days, they can remember things from their 20s, right? Many of them children of survivors, and the survivors had, everyone can tell me that there are things that they did not have. Now they have, there's appreciation. Believe me, it's a scary thing when there's no appreciation. And perhaps this is what's going to occur during this period of time. And the Hagadah, Hagadah, the word Hagadah appears also in the section of Bikurim. And one of the old translations to the word Hagadah is Udita, lehodot. Hagadah is about lehodot, to express gratitude to the Almighty. Gratitude for what we have physically and gratitude for what we have spiritually. And I think that we can also appreciate the spiritual gifts of Judaism because we have a level of clarity of dealing with what's occurring, right? We can understand that there's a message here from a higher being. What the message is, I don't know. We could be appreciative through this experience. That's my take to what we are experiencing now. And we'll continue with prayer. Because the illness and the fear is great. Continue taking care of yourselves, please. Several halachic questions have come up over the past few days. A lot of them had to do with tfilat kelim. Tfilat kelim, people buy new dishes for Pesach, and you can't go to a mikvah. So there is an option that if you have a non-Jew you interact with, give the vessels to a non-Jew as a gift. It belongs to them. Now, be sure they understand afterwards that you're a Jew, and therefore you need it back, and you have to borrow it for the next 40 years. Okay, so that's an option that's used. Perhaps we're going to have the mikvah open here. We'll still be in touch. These are things that we'll have to address, but that's an option that exists. Another thing that's on my mind that I need to share with you is the following. There was circulating in Israel that some have suggested that Erev Rosh Chodesh Nisan, which is on Wednesday, Erev Rosh Chodesh, should be a day of prayer, which I agree with. We should pray, have more kavanah in your prayer, say Tehillim, no question about it. But one of the rabbis in Israel mentioned that people should perhaps fast until midday, okay? And I don't support it, and I don't think it should be done. And I'm not basing it on my own opinion, but I'm basing it on Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, who already in the 1840s had an understanding that when you're fighting a pandemic, take care of your health, okay? If you want, this is a suggestion, cut out sugar over the next few days. And if you cut out sugar, it is good for your immune system. Stay healthy, eat healthy. And that's your biggest mitzvah during this period of time, far greater than fasting, believe me. So that's something that we should keep in mind, to take care of ourselves, keep away from others, because that's what the doctors say. Today, in these days, the mitzvah is not to listen to rabbis, but to listen to doctors. Or you can listen to the rabbi who tells you listen to the doctors. Your choice. But believe me, it is a time that we have. That is our mitzvah. That's our responsibility. As we get closer to Pesach, worry not about details. We'll find solutions to any problem that arises. Anything, there's halachic end of things. We'll find solutions. We'll be in touch through email. So therefore, fear has no place during this period of time. Faith and prayer and optimism is what we are about, that we should merit indeed to return to a spirit of lehodot, to express our gratitude to the Almighty. That's what we hope to do. So I thank you all for participating. We'll take some questions, and you can unmute yourself. And I think David has a question. No, yeah.
I sent you a suggestion. I don't know if that's workable halachically.
Okay.
Of since many people have kalim that need to be toveled, could the rabbi arrange like we do for bedikas for selling the chametz with one guy? And in terms of the kinyan, perhaps we could send in a picture of the keli and have them say, okay, I'm assuming purchase of all of these kalim, and then for 1 year until this thing blows over, that it becomes a Hara Shah. I don't know.
Interesting. The only issue would be is that I would have to interact with a specific, a level of complexity, perhaps something to work on. No question. Creative it is, like always. But if the best would be if you interact with the guy, otherwise we'll have to process it, because you have to remember, you would have to authorize me, which is not difficult. But I would have to have, let's work on that. You're the first person who comes up with it. Creative thinking. And yes, 2 thumbs up to David for good thinking. But do you have someone in the building that you interact with there? That would be ideal. Those in Israel have to go to Aza to find a non-Jew. So good luck.
Or Iran.
Okay. Anyway, I thank everyone for joining. I thank our sponsors, to Ella and to Gary, for sponsoring this shiur.
Happy birthday.
What was that?
Happy birthday to Ella and Gary.
Oh, happy birthday indeed. Happy birthday.
Where does one get shmura matzah?
Okay. So if indeed there's shmura matzah out there, you get it. What I've mentioned in the past is that in case of need, this is only in case of need, all matzah in the marketplace that's kosher lePesach is some level of shmura. So I hope we don't get to that, but if we do, that works as well. I think they do have in Sobeys shmura, and remember, you could use machine shmura. You know that. Some great people use machine shmura.
I was actually talking about shmura.
What was that?
I was actually asking about a machine shmura.
So I think they have it in Sobeys.
Yeah, they have it in Sobeys.
No Trios also have machine shmura.
Yep.
Okay.
So Metro.
Machine shmura.
Machine shmura. Excellent.
Also Costco.
Costco. Okay.
$8.99.
Okay, very good. Rabosai, we'll still be in touch, and we'll have another opportunity, B'ezrat Hashem, before Pesach, to talk. If you have questions, email me. For now, I thank you all for participating. I wish
Thank you, Rabbi.
everyone take care of yourselves. We'll deal with this. We'll get over it. We'll be better from it. But for now, may the preparations go well. We'll be in touch in all kind of different ways. Thank you, and a good day to all.
Good day.